Thanks for staying with us on SABC News. I'm joined now by Khaya Sithole, who's an independent analyst. Khaya, thanks so much for your time on SABC News. So how possible is it to estimate the amount of damage, perhaps in rand value, done in South Africa over the course of the last week or so?
Afternoon and good afternoon to the viewers. It's obviously quite a tricky exercise to try and quantify the damage. I spoke to the Consumer Goods Council yesterday, and they said on the basis of the calculations they had done by the end of business yesterday, they were looking at a number of around 5 billion rand. So it's not an easy one. However, what will become clearer over time is that obviously all the affected businesses will be able to firstly tell us how much they lost in stock and resources, and also obviously based on what they had expected to sell and the revenues and the profits that they expected to generate during this period, they'll be able to give us a number to work with. What will remain unquantifiable, of course, are the long-term effects on people who lose their jobs, for example, and on the people whose ability to have been participating in the economy will never be known, because either because a shop is closed down, it means that people cannot access it. So there's going to be a lot of calculations done in the long term to try and figure out what the economic damage is, but we'll never get to a final number. We'll simply know that there's been an extensive damage, particularly for those that are not insured.
Khaya, there's different layers when it comes to looking at the impact of what's taking place in the country and the violence. Just speak to us about that on a macro and micro level.
So I would think, obviously, at the individual business level, it's simply going to be a matter of how much has been lost over the past couple of days, and also the question of how long it's going to take to repair the damage. So that is what every single business is going to be trying to deal with. There's also going to be the feeders into that business ecosystem. So companies in the logistics business, for example, that will now not be delivering anything because there's no one to deliver to. Companies that will not be able to courier anything because businesses have shut down. Those are also going to be the additional businesses that are going to suffer the long run effects of what we're seeing here. And on the bigger ecosystem at large, there's obviously going to be a bit of hesitation from a lot of people that are planning on either opening up new branches or expanding their businesses. They're going to hold back and say, let us wait and see, let us repair the existing businesses that have now been shut down before we consider the impact of scaling up or increasing our operations. So on the bigger picture, the country is definitely worse off on the basis of what has happened in the past couple of days.
Okay, so we've seen violence and destruction not only at some of these small businesses that you've spoken about, but at factories, clinics and ports. Increasingly today, we're hearing analysis from ministers in government and the like, that this is a bigger coordinated attempt at economic destabilization. What do you make of that?
So I think when this all started, it looked like essentially we're having this sporadic sense of frustration across the province of KwaZulu-Natal in particular. And of course, the one point that was raised was that all of it happened in the aftermath of the incarceration of former President Jacob Zuma. So that seems to have been the genesis of what we're seeing now. But increasingly over the past couple of days, when you've seen some of the attacks being really initiated on places that you can struggle to link to the political dimension, and also to the question of what people are trying to get out of that, then obviously you can see that there's been an escalation on the scale of what is being targeted, and some of the resources and some of the factories that are being targeted. You have to ask yourself the question of why would people that are essentially trying to get something, whether it's goods or services, or whether they're trying to get food in cases that you've seen, why would they then go and attack a factory that doesn't actually produce any of those items? So the scale has been an infiltration of the forces that are trying to engage in a much bigger destabilization campaign. And I think the difficulty is that we'll never know at what point in time it escalated into that and really morphed away from the frustration that emerged from KZN last week.
So we're grappling now with finding out what is actually at the root of this. We know that there are concerns around the incarceration of the former president, as you're saying, that morphed into different things. There are also concerns about jobs, food, and much more. Are we able to say this is at the root of the current malaise that we're seeing in South Africa? And then also, what are the solutions to it? Can we spend our way out of it? What must be done?
Suppose the root cause of it is that in different forms of literature, people have been saying for the better part of the past 10 years that there is definitely a risk in South Africa that one day the sum of the frustrations are going to boil over. So this is something that's always been boiling. What has been missing historically is essentially a universal trigger point, which was going to get that many people to say, actually, we think this is the time for us to express our frustration. So the root cause is actually the socio-economic dimensions of the country that have been fractured and have been fractured for a long period of time. So that's really what we're facing here. And of course, there's also been this vacuum that exists in the era of law enforcement, in that one of the issues is that people aren't worried about what happens once they get incarcerated, because for most cases, the possibility of getting caught is really remote. So if you're seeing even now over the past couple of days, when you're thinking that there are clearly hotspots, there are clearly areas or shopping centers that are going to be obvious targets. And for us to then discover, even as recently as last night, that there is no law enforcement means that, again, the idea that people are going to get caught seems to be a matter of something has to go wrong in order for you to get caught, rather than us thinking that as soon as I do something wrong, law enforcement will be there. So the sum of all those variables has actually created this toxic environment that we have here. And of course, the reality here is that if we want to even start tackling the issues, we cannot be driven by the hysteria of what we've seen over the past couple of days and say that we need to fix a 2 or 3 day problem. We need to go back and deal with the underlying issues that actually led to so many people feeling so anxious and so excluded from the economic system that they felt that this was their moment to actually speak up against it in the different forms in which they can.
Khaya, when we are in moments of crisis in South Africa, what we tend to see is that there's inequality is exacerbated almost. So people who are at the very bottom end, who are very economically vulnerable, will be impacted even more. And then people who go up in terms of income and security, although they are also vulnerable, much less so than the people below. Are we going to see that with this unrest?
Unfortunately, yes. And I think even if you look at it at a simplistic level, if I owned a business last week and I employed 10 or 15 people and I happen to have business insurance, what I will then have to make a call on over the next couple of days is whether I simply go and claim that insurance and then cover all my debts and then move on with my life. And if I make the call, the 10 or 15 people that I employed last week will never be able to be employed again, particularly if you look at employment prospects of people generally. So the risk here is that even after the aftermath of that, I, as a business owner, will at least be able to cover my debts, will be able to get something in the form of an insurance payout, and I decide to reinvest it or keep it. But the people that I employed last week will not be able to get a job tomorrow. And of course, you can already see that 10 people are much worse off than the one person who did employ them and was also affected and is able to retransition into the economy in one form or another. So unfortunately, whenever reset moments of this nature happen, it tends to actually make the situation of the economically marginalized even worse off. And I think what you will see is that a lot of businesses, unfortunately, will also use this as an opportunity to deal with issues that they might have been struggling with in the past couple of months. We know it is not an easy process in South Africa to simply say, I'm going to offboard employees, but people will then use this as an opportunity to say, well, actually, it was not my intention to offboard employees, but my shop was shut down, and then I'm going to reopen. I'm going to be running a new operation altogether. So therefore, I can afford to actually say it's a new operation. I don't have to hire 10 people that I had last week. I'll simply take 2 or 3. So the consequences are going to be felt more acutely at the lower end of the income spectrum.
Khaya Sithole, an accountant. My apologies for mischaracterizing you earlier on, and an independent analyst. Thanks so much for your time.